morning. I am Debbie Brown, today's worship associate. Before we enter into our service this morning, I draw your attention to the announcements printed in your order of service, including these. From Elizabeth Baldus, Programs for Children and Youth is proud to announce that the picture book library for children is in the upstairs hallway and open for your use. The collection includes copies of stories told in service, as well as many other wonderful books, all of which are connected to Unitarian Universalist values. All are invited to browse and borrow.
Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life journey, you are welcome here. I'm Ann Kadlecek, the minister here at Albany Unitarian Universalist, where we strive to make those words a reality. In that spirit, I want to begin today by acknowledging Bisexual Pride Day, also known as Bi Visibility Day, which is this coming Tuesday. If you've never heard of this day, you're not alone. The B in LGBTQ+ is often invisible, as the reactions to claiming a sexual orientation that is not straight or gay can discourage openness. But whoever you are, whomever you love, you are welcome here, where you can be as visible as you choose to be. Also this week, beginning tomorrow, is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, the first of the high holy days. It's a time for reflection, prayer, acknowledging mistakes, making amends, personal transformation, and our theme for today, forgiveness. It's an invitation to reflect on the relationships in our lives that have been harmed, and to explore the possibility of repair and healing. Each year at this time, I'm drawn to these questions and practices. I wish we had a holiday like this in Unitarian Universalism. But we can and do learn from our neighbors and explore these things together in our own way. So come in. Join in the quest for truth and the practice of love and perhaps even forgiveness. Let us light our chalice. Today it will be lit by the Torres family as we say together words adapted from Vanessa Rush Southern. We light our chalice for truth, for love, and for forgiveness, the place where truth and love meet and merge.
Second verse and the third verse together. Please stay seated as we sing, Striving for Change. Striving for change together, healing our pain together. The web of life holds us in this truth. We are not alone. Journeying on. Learning to love.
Our story today is The Forgiveness Garden by Lauren Thompson with pictures by Christy Hale. This parable was inspired by the Garden of Forgiveness, which is a real place created in Beirut, Lebanon, in the aftermath of a civil war. The book's setting and use of Sanskrit names reflects that particular geography. But of course, it could take place anywhere human beings coexist. There was a valley, and through the valley ran a stream. The village of Vayam stood on one side, and the village of Gamte stood on the other. There was no peace in the valley, for the two villages had hated each other for a long, long time. One day, a new argument sparked. Both villages claimed a certain part of the stream as their own. Angry words flew across the stream, then stones. A Gamte boy named Karun picked up a large stone and hurled it across the water. A Vayam girl named Sama stood where the stones fell. The stone hit Sama hard on the head, and she fell hard to the ground. The villagers of Vayam ran to help. The villages of Gamte cheered and ran away. The Vayams called out for revenge. They were angry and they were afraid. Would the Gamtes never stop fighting us? They gathered around Sama, admiring her courage and plotting their revenge against the Gamtes. As days passed, Sama's pain began to lessen, but her hatred of the Gamtes grew. And in the village of Gamte, too, people were angry, and they were afraid. Would the Vayams fight us always? They gathered around Karun, praising his courage and scheming how to defend against the Vayams. Karun secretly wondered how brave he had really been, but his hatred for the Vayams only grew. One day, Sama walked along the stream, yearning for something to ease her aching, angry heart. She reached a calm pool and bent to drink. What she saw reflected there stopped her. She saw the ugly scar from the stone, but most of all, she saw her own dark, brooding scowl. "Who have I become?" she cried. She wept for a long time. Then Sama looked across the stream. There, a few children from Gamte walked together. How scared and angry and sad they looked. Sama's heart softened. They are just like us, she thought. Suddenly, a few of Sama's people ran up. "Here you are," they shouted. "The time for revenge has come." And they pulled her away to join the fight. Villagers from Vayan and Gamte crowded the stream. The Vayams held it captive. It was Karun, and they all held stones. A large stone was put into Sama's hands. It was the stone that Karun had thrown. "Throw the stone at him," her people hissed. "Throw it hard." Sama looked at all the villagers, those from Vayam and those from Gamte. Their faces were like hers had been, hardened with anger and fear and hate. Suddenly, Sama knew what she had to do. "No," she said in a loud, clear voice. "I won't hurt him. Let the boy go." Her people grumbled. Sama went on. "It's time to stop the fighting," she said. "We must stop hurting and hating." And she flung the large stone to the ground. "Let us build a garden instead." Well, now all of the people grumbled. Someone shouted, "What kind of garden?" Sama knew. "A forgiveness garden." Some people gasped, some people scoffed, some just laughed. But some from Vayam murmured, if Sama wants it, and they let Karun go. Then they piled their stones near Sama's. Some from Gamte saw this and murmured, "It's worth a try." They added stones of their own. Only Karun hung back, scared, angry. Stone by stone, the people of the valley built a garden wall together, but they had questions. "If we forgive, must we forget all that has happened?" asked the villagers of Vayam. Sama answered, "We will sit together in the garden and decide." "Must we apologize?" asked the villagers of Gamte. "Will the Vayams apologize?" Sama answered, "The garden will help us find what is right." Still, Karun stayed apart, watching and thinking. Villagers set flowers into the soil and planted a tree. When the garden was complete, its loveliness made everyone smile. "This garden is for all of us," Sama said. "It can help us to put aside hate and learn what forgiveness feels like. Who will join me?" At first, no one moved. No one dared. The two villages had hated each other for a long, long time. It was hard to try a new way. Then Karun, brave Karun, stepped forward. "I will join you," he said to Sama. Sama of Vayam and Karun of Gamte stepped into the garden together. They sat under the tree and they began to talk. What do you think they said? And that is the end of our story. Now is the time when our children, youth, and their volunteers go to their Sunday morning groups to try to answer that question of what do you think they said, and other questions as well. If you are new or visiting, please accompany your young person and sign them in, and if you are unsure, I'll be in the hallway in a moment to help you. The congregation is invited to sing the children out to the short hymn number 414 with the words, "As you leave this friendly place."
Here in Religious Community, we take this time in our service to notice and honor the joys and sorrows that each of us carries in our hearts as we are present to each other and to what is good and hard in our lives.
Our reading is an abridged version of a poem by Sharon Olds entitled, "After 27 years, my mother apologizes for my childhood." When you tilted toward me, arms out, like someone trying to walk through a fire, crying out you were sorry for what you had done to me. When you quietly screamed, "Where else could I turn? Who else did I have?" The chopped crockery of your hands swinging toward me, the water cracking from your eyes like moisture from stones under pressure. I could not see what I would do with the rest of my life. The sky seemed to be splintering like a window someone is bursting into or out of. Your tiny face glittered as if with shattered crystal, with true regret, the regret of the body. I could not see what my days would be with you sorry, with you wishing you had not done it. I took you in my arms. I said, "It's all right. It's all right." The air filled with flying glass. I hardly knew what I said or who I would be now that I had forgiven you. So ends the reading. Who would we be if we forgave? Not the same as we are now. Oh, we might still be angry, hurt, disappointed, unreconciled, unrecovered, but forgiveness changes us. Every major faith tradition I know encourages forgiveness. And it's pretty popular among secular self-help folks and therapists too, as well as people who have come through hard things and figured out what it takes to keep going. Forgiveness liberates the soul, said Nelson Mandela. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, to forgive. Forgive everybody. That's Maya Angelou. There's a biblical passage from the book of Matthew quoting Jesus as instructing us to forgive not 7 times, but at least 77 times. And there's Anne Lamott's gem of a quote. Not forgiving is like drinking rat poison and then waiting for the rat to die. Takes a moment, yeah. Forgiveness is a powerful practice. It can keep us from getting stuck in past wrongs and resentment and free us to grow toward our best, most loving selves. And I struggle with forgiveness. These days, I don't think I'm the only one who's drinking a little more rat poison than is probably good for me. And that affects us all. What can we do? It's not like flossing our teeth. Forgiveness doesn't just happen because we decide to add it to our routine. Forgiveness emerges out of our compassion for others, our recognition of the humanity and the frailty of the person who hurt us, the parent who failed us, even someone who uses their power to do great evil. And because it comes from compassion, any practice that builds compassion and connection can help us to forgive. There are plenty of meditative and reflective practices that aren't explicitly about forgiveness, but that build the muscles we need to do this thing that wise people tell us is good for us. It can help to start small, not with the really deep hurts. Maybe start with the driver who cuts us off, or the cable company rep who is less than helpful. Anne Lamott says that the earth is a forgiveness school. Life gives us plenty of opportunities to practice, to build our capacity to forgive. We can seek out the opportunities we can handle or that stretch us a little, and we can practice. We can do some of that here, perhaps. But when it comes to forgiving the big things, even with practice, it gets more complicated. And what we think of as forgiveness might not always be good for us. Sometimes forgiveness is attempted or sought or coerced in ways that end up further harming the person doing the forgiving. I've known people suffering abuse who believed, for various reasons, that they had to forgive their abuser. A little power analysis can be helpful. If someone with less power is being asked to forgive someone with more, we may wish to explore whether we're centering something other than the well-being of the person who was harmed. especially if the harm is ongoing or if the forgiveness helps maintain abusive power structures. No one has the right to expect anyone else to forgive. No one has a right to be forgiven. You are not entitled to anyone's forgiveness, and no one is entitled to yours. Forgiveness that is good for us is a choice and a practice, and not something to rush into. If we find that we are willing ourselves to forgive quickly because of quotes like the ones I shared, or a desire to avoid conflict, or the culture around us, or our own belief that good people forgive freely, that may not be good for us. Trying to move on too quickly can prevent us from actually practicing forgiveness. And when combined with a lack of accountability, can create bigger problems down the road. Forgiveness doesn't happen on a schedule. Sometimes it takes a very long time, or it doesn't happen at all. It might arrive, as in our reading, in the sudden realization that a burden carried for decades is not there anymore. Or it might unfold slowly over time. It's a practice, not an item to be checked off our to-do list. It helps me sometimes to think about forgiveness not as an isolated act that I'm responsible for, but as part of a larger process of healing. Jewish tradition offers us such a process. Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg wrote a book entitled On Repentance and Repair. It was the Unitarian Universalist common read a couple of years ago. If it hasn't come your way yet, I recommend it. In that book, she says that forgiveness is not a warm, fuzzy embrace, but rather the victim's acknowledgement that the perpetrator no longer owes them, that they have done the repair work necessary to settle the situation. She goes on, "You stole from me? Okay. You acknowledge that you did so in a self-aware way. You're in therapy to work on why you stole. You paid me back, and you apologized in a way that I felt reflected an understanding of the impact your actions had on me. It seems you're not going to do this to anyone else. Fine. It doesn't mean we pretend the theft never happened, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we return to any kind of ongoing relationship. But whatever I may feel or not feel about you, I can consider this chapter closed. We're done here." Ruttenberg is clear that there is no expectation of forgiveness until the person who wronged you has done these things: naming and owning the harm, doing everything they can to repair it, accepting consequences, beginning to change, and making a real apology. Actually, multiple apologies if needed, with witnesses to be sure they're good apologies. And if all those steps are taken and you still can't settle the account, Jewish tradition holds that the perpetrator is off the hook anyway. Case closed. Whether we're Jewish or not, this can be a helpful framework. If we've been harmed, there's no call to rush to forgive. We can take our time, see how seriously the other person takes it, and what repair work they are willing to do. And we can separate forgiveness, that sense that we are no longer owed, from resuming a relationship. One does not imply the other. And if we harm someone else, we can take responsibility, repair the harm as best we can, accept consequences, apologize in a meaningful way, and do the work of personal transformation so we choose differently next time. Then, if we wish, we might ask for forgiveness. And whether it comes or not, perhaps we can forgive ourselves. So that's one approach. Forgiveness as part of a healing process that includes both parties and some accountability. In the world we're in today, with so much harm being done that I cannot find my way to forgive right now, this process has some appeal. And there's another approach to forgiveness. Valerie Kaur is an activist, lawyer, and author. Kaur, her family, and her religious community are Sikh, S-I-K-H. The first of the 19 people killed in hate crimes immediately following 9/11 was a close family friend of Kaur's, who she called Uncle, Balbir Uncle. Balbir was shot and killed while planting flowers in front of his gas station. His killer had boasted that morning that he was going to, and with apologies for the language, I quote, "go out and shoot some towel heads." 15 years later, Kaur and Balbir's brother talked with the man who killed Balbir. He said he was sorry, and then went on to talk about the terrorist attacks of 9/11 as though they were some kind of excuse. Eventually, he said that when he died and went to heaven, he would ask to see Balbir and hug him and ask his forgiveness. Balbir's brother said, "We already forgave you." There's a lot going on here. This is forgiving an overt racist who killed a beloved family member before getting even that pretty minimal apology. And there's a member of a marginalized community within an unjust power structure forgiving someone who has more power and where the threat is ongoing. Definitely some red flags here. But Kaur makes clear what this does for her. Forgiveness is not forgetting, she says. Forgiveness is freedom from hate. Sometimes the spiritual groundwork, that compassion and connection, allows us to get to freedom from hate without a whole lot of movement on the other side. Whether or not this feels right to you in this moment, forgiveness is a personal spiritual practice. None of us can judge what makes sense for someone else. But our response to examples like this is another matter. There's a tendency in our society to hold up and celebrate this kind of apparently undemanding forgiveness. One striking example that still sticks in my mind is from 10 years ago, the terrorist shooting at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. The killer, with explicitly racist motivation, murdered 9 people. The news was full of reports admiring the victims' families for almost immediately saying they forgave the killer. I can't speak to how these families understood their forgiveness. But I can offer some of what I've learned about where it might come from and the appeal of this kind of forgiveness for white people like me. Some of my learnings come from womanist theologians. The term womanist is claimed by certain Christian theologians to highlight the influence that being a black woman has on their theology. Womanist theologian Kelly Brown Douglas speaks to the fact that in these widely publicized and celebrated expressions of forgiveness, it is so often black people who are doing the forgiving. This tends to have a good feel, she says, for white people, as black forgiveness seems to displace the black anger that is so uncomfortable. The celebration becomes, says Douglas, all about the feelings of white people and their need to be delivered from black rage. But this kind of forgiveness has a real purpose for the community doing the forgiving. Douglas writes, "The act of forgiveness, as often displayed in the black faith tradition, is grounded in the assumption that no human justice can adequately make amends for the grave injustices of white supremacy. The act of forgiveness serves as a liberating act as it frees those, such as the families of Emmanuel, from the anguish of waiting for the proper justice to be enacted. At the same time, Black forgiveness recognizes that the love of God is more powerful than white racist hatred. And she continues, the act of forgiveness frees Black people from the hate of white supremacy that can distort their own sense of self, and thus prevent them from moving forward in their own living toward freedom. This forgiveness, this freedom from getting sucked into the hate, is not about displacing anger. It's about refusing to lose oneself in an unjust system. It's an act of self-preservation. There's still plenty of room for the rage that demands change. The God of which Douglas writes is forgiving and angry and infinitely loving and affirming of everyone's worth and dignity. And we can be too. Those of us who are white might do well to notice not just the forgiveness, but also the injustice that makes it so necessary. And those of us who have had the privilege of not having to practice this kind of forgiveness before might have something to learn from those who have, for our own self-preservation, so that we don't get stuck in the hate. Ultimately, forgiveness is about our well-being and breaking the cycles of hate and violence that threaten to trap us all. Forgiveness can hold rage and a fierce love that affirms and demands change. Forgiveness is powerful, and it's good for us. However we choose to engage with a practice of forgiveness, may it guide each of us to new discoveries about who we will be. May we work on forgiveness in ourselves and be a little careful in our encouraging or judging forgiveness in others. And may we all know the gift of a forgiveness that frees us from hate and is unrelenting in its demand for change. May it be so. Amen. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not giving in or abandoning our anger or letting people off the hook. Forgiveness is freedom from hate. In our quest for truth and our practice of love, may each of us in our own way, in our own time, forgive and become more free. May it be so. As we bring our service to a close, please join in saying our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our service has ended, but all are invited for refreshments and conversation in Channing Hall. A note to those of you who are here with a child or youth, their groups continue until 11:15. So please take this opportunity to grab a cup of coffee before you go to collect them, and this will also help the adult guides to bring the sessions to a coherent ending. And please come back next Sunday, when we will be here with a service that is actually entitled, "Oh God, Language of Reverence in Unitarian Universalism." Until then, go in peace, return again in joy.